Hey, welcome back to the Lightspeed Lawn Care Marketing Podcast. I am your host, as always, Cody Owen, sitting down with Chad Currie from CLC Landscaping. And Chad, I wanted to have you on because we have gotten a lot of input from guys on the maintenance side of the lawn care world, but I wanted to talk to you about hiring because you are a landscape projects guy. You do huge work. And so I wanted to get some of your insight into your hiring process and how you find great employees for the business. So thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, Cody. I really appreciate it. And it's always, it's always great to catch up as well. I know you played a pretty big role originally with some of our marketing and stuff too. And so I'm glad to see, you're still, kicking it off strong. So yeah, man, I'll touch on, I'll just be frank, like anybody, there's nothing that's easy. It just takes a lot of repetition, a lot of work, a lot of just consistency, I think is the key. But for me, I think what we found was what we found working the best is more of not even like how to, granted, and I'll touch on the point of like how I feel that we've been able to overcome some of the strategies of like hiring somebody that essentially the goal is we don't want to find somebody that is not working, right? We want people that have been working that are in a job that, and that's it's tough, right? And now I think the difference between like maintenance and project and design build work is there's a little bit more money being made. So there is what I call, you can consider it a career, even if you're a beginning guy, like the guy on the dirt, boots on the ground. Lawn care is a little different in my opinion, right? Some people can make a career out of it. I personally, we have a whole different deal. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but with design build work, I think ultimately it's the type of person. And so I think when we hire, we really focus on, when we do find the people, we focus on, the culture of our company, really, really trying to find guys that are a good fit. I don't really care that they have a ton of knowledge. I want to know that they're going to be, they're driven, they're willing to listen, team player, they're a leader, natural born leader. And that's pretty hard to find. But in terms of finding those guys, it's the same thing like everybody says, in the Indeed and Craigslist and this and that. But what I've found is people know people, right? And so if you take care of your guys, the ones that are here, and you do put in the effort to train and you put in the effort to, make them know that they feel that they're important, they're going to tell the next guys. And then again, building a company, they're going to treat your clients better. It's a revolving circle. Now your clients you're building more value, and then you can afford to pay the guys more. And then those guys tell more people. And then now, you're getting guys that are like, man, how do I work for CLC? Like, what does it take? And so I think that's like the long game. The short game is for us is going to be, if we're talking like actual marketing, like I think what we've found is really kind of like what you do, like, the hyper focused like neighborhoods for like, for ads and stuff for like a service. We're kind of doing the same thing, except that like, we know what church, we know our particular person that we're looking to hire. And let's say they're all in a certain church, right? So we'll do an ad that's kind of focused and centered around, okay, why should they come to work for us? It's kind of the grasp for them. But then we'll trigger that to like, hey, we're going to hit it really hard on Sunday. We're going to, really blow that up, and we're going to do like a geofence around that particular location and multiple locations throughout. So that's been kind of, obviously I know better than I do. I can't take full credit for all of the, some of the Facebook stuff, but I know a little bit about it. And I know that it's tough. You can't go and say, hey, I want a 35-year-old male, for this job, obviously for discrimination reasons. But the idea is if you put it in the right spot, it's a numbers game. It's an average game, right? You're going to have 100 people that are your target person, and you're going to have 5 that aren't, but those 5 that aren't, it doesn't really matter, right? You just don't want it to be the opposite.
Yeah. So I want to weigh in real quickly on the Facebook side of this. Because if you are trying to do any form of targeting with like a job posting ad on Facebook, it's going to not let you do anything, basically. Yeah. So what Chad is talking about here, where it's a careers type page that's like, what is it like to work at CLC Landscaping? That is, you can run that as a normal ad campaign. Go ahead.
I said, it's like, why should I work there? Yeah, exactly. And it's like you said, it's not a job, right? Even though in reality, that's what we're looking for. But yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
It's just what you have to do to be like carefully within the bounds of, if you're specifically advertising a job, you can't target the ad in any way for like, it's how Facebook remains compliant with like equal opportunity stuff. But you can,
and you'll figure that out real
specifically
quick.
target. Yeah. You'll go in to try to do it and they won't let you do anything. You'll be like, why did they send me here?
Big red
But yeah.
letters.
So tell me a little bit about, because it sounds like you have figured out something that we have talked about on our podcast. You know, we talk a lot in marketing about your ideal client, but it sounds like you have also identified your ideal employee. And that's why you have like specific places you are looking for, like our employees gather here in their off time. So how did you work that kind of thing out?
Trial and error. and again, doing things like this, right? Listening to a podcast, listening to other people that have been successful. Even some people, a lot of people, and I'll be the first to admit too, there's a lot of people that will talk about the ideas. And one of the peer groups I'm in, they talk about, we don't idea share, we experience share. You know, in terms of like, everybody has these great bar talks and ideas of like, oh, this is the best way to run $1 million company or a $10 million company, whatever. And then, but I mean, in all reality, they're not following their own, you know, they're not practicing what they preach. And I'm guilty of that to an extent. But I think ultimately, like, you know, focusing on, like, again, the target client, understanding who it is. I mean, if people, or I'm sorry, the target employee, people who want, like, you know, I mean, I could go two different ways here. And so I guess going in terms of like, one, you got to understand who you need to work for you, right? And for us, it's not going to be somebody that is constantly, typically the guys that are always calling, looking, and just kind of showing up and randomly, sometimes we've had luck, but sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's not, it doesn't work really well. But I think ultimately what we've found that works is by getting to know the people, and really one of our core values is we do things differently. Okay. So with that being said, like I don't really want to push Indeed. I don't really want to push ZipRecruiter, because at the end of the day, a guy in the field is different than someone in the office, or different than somebody that's just mowing lawns. And you got to figure out where that is. And so to me, word of mouth is obviously the best, right? I think that's on just pretty much all platforms. It just has the most authenticity, I guess.
Well, and you're going to end up with, when you have someone who's referred to you by someone else, and then you decide to hire them, there is a built-in thing where that employee knows, this new employee knows that the way that they act is going to reflect on the person who referred them. Right. So if that's a person that they're good friends with, that person is responsible. It's going to like pull their responsibility and reliability up a tier, even from where it might normally be at work, because they can't, you know, screw over this person that helped them.
Yeah. If they're decent, and most people, so to that point, like, yeah, I mean, we did it the other day, right? We've been, you know, one of my managers is kind of like hesitant to hire like family brothers, but it either works really well in my experience, or it really doesn't work well. And so, you know, the biggest thing I've heard in terms of hiring and firing is like hire fast and fire faster, right? And so, you know, you have to, you got to put them to the gauntlet and different things. But I think in terms of like that person, yeah, there's an unspoken truth or unspoken kind of like, you know, agreement that, hey, if I put your name out for this job and you start to like, you know, make me look bad, like, even though like we tell them, hey, y'all are two separate people, but at the end of the day, like, we want to make sure that we want the best. And that's kind of, it's you really got to understand people. And I'm reading a book right now by Jeff Smart called Who. And that's actually a great book. Like I say, I'm reading it. I do a lot of Audible. So,
yeah, that counts.
Yeah. And I'm sure, Cody, if you wanted to share like a link or put that in, I'll confirm that that's exactly the name, but I know it's by Jeff Smart. So
I just pulled it up. It'll be in the notes for sure.
Awesome. I think it'll help a lot of people. I've given it to my director of employee success. I've given it to her. She does all of our hiring, onboarding and stuff. But anyway, so in terms of that particular person, you know, like I said, you got to figure out who you want, who works for you. And a lot of that's trial and error, right? I mean, I talked to a guy the other day he's literally a shop across from me. And, you know, they're probably a tenth of the size we are. And we're not huge by any means, like nowhere near where I want to be. But we've dealt with some of that. And he's like, you know, we're hiring a second or third guy. And he's like, man, I just did this and that. And I was like, you know, my opinion, take it for what it's worth, is especially the smaller guys, the guys are at that, you know, 400 to 500 to $1 million mark, even below, somewhere in that range. You know, it is, you're still learning, you're still hiring stuff. But what I found that worked, and I wish I would have learned it sooner, was one, you got to know your numbers, right? In the business. So you can know that you can afford to pay these guys. But two is you need to get people that you can count on. And I found that it's a little bit of a cheat, you know, where you intentionally pay them, you know, 15, 20% more than the next guy, as long as you're pricing right. That is very important. But you're going to get those guys, and you got the same thing, but you still have to weed them out. You still have to figure out, is this guy good? Yeah. And so there's no quick, easy way to do it. But I think if you just do that to at least get them in there, and then you're building the culture and everything around them, then you create an environment where they want to stick around. And again, this is work. We're here more than 40, 50 hours a week. Let's make it fun too. But I think if you do that, those guys will stick around. And so
can we dive in on something you said a second ago? A minute ago, you said hire fast, fire faster. Can we talk about what that looks like? Because I have not talked to anyone yet about like letting people go when you realize they're not a good fit. Can you talk about the fire faster portion of that?
Yeah, it's I'd love to. It's the hardest thing, and it's one of those things that I'd probably say that I think we've gotten a lot better about practicing what we preach, but there's some standardization to it. But yeah, it's the fact is like, let's be honest. If you really step back and you're in the business, whether it's a lawn care, a home cleaning or some technology company, when you hire that employee, typically that first week, maybe even 2 weeks, you're going to know like, man, this guy's going to work or this guy's not, and that's where you obviously, I always try not to make an emotional decision. The larger and the more we've grown, we try to be more analytical about it. But at the same time, there's some standardization. And you got to trust your instinct. I mean, that's what's got you this far. And so when it comes time, I will say there's probably been 2 times in my entire career of this, which has been almost going on 10 years. We'll probably some point this year, probably 25 to, maybe 30 employees. That's our goal. And with that being said, like, I want to say that there's probably only been maybe 1 or 2 times that I felt like, man, I probably fired that guy a little too fast. And I didn't like the feeling it gave me. But everybody else, it is like a breath of fresh air, and you're freaking out like, oh my God, how I'm gonna run the business if I let this guy go. And I told my production manager the other day, I said, think of it this way, because some people, they want to fire when it's good for them as a company, right? Well, yeah, that's the perfect story. But how often do you have guys that are not good because you didn't spend the time to get the right person, go through the ringer, and put them through that, the gauntlet, as you'd call it, or whatever you want to say, the funnel, the filter, whatever. And how many times have that person has just dropped the ball and they just leave a week, 2 weeks, and leave you high and dry when you expected this thing to work? Well, I would rather, if you are sticking to your being consistent on the hiring and firing, I'd rather fire them on my terms. And yes, if I know that it's going to put me in a bad spot, okay, maybe I should be hiring and looking at really pushing new hires and stuff beforehand. But at the end of the day, what I told my production manager the other day was like, imagine out of all the times that we've been left in the dark, in the corner, basically, because somebody just left us hanging that we thought was going to be good. Imagine if we could cut that in half. I'd be willing to say that's probably cost us 20 to 30 days, like last year. Imagine if we followed our rule one, making sure you put them through the filter, do your best, to hire the right person first, but there's no perfection. There's no perfect way, right? People are really good at selling themselves, especially when they're talking about themselves. I know I can be, but, I think ultimately that's number one. Number 2 is going to be the fact that, you have to trust your instinct, but, really, if you could do it on your own terms and you say, you know what, like, you showed up late today and it's going to put you in a bad spot. But guess what? You're going to set an example pretty fast. You don't have to be unprofessional. You can be very presentable. I wouldn't suggest firing somebody in front of anybody, but let's say you're having a morning team meeting. They're coming in 15 minutes late. First day for us, like, dude, go home. Even though man, I need that guy. But I promise you that one guy, and you doing it on your terms, is going to, 1, set an example. 2, it should set an example for him, or you're going to find out really fast that, man, this isn't going to work, and you can already go the next direction. Now, with that being said, by doing so, with that example you're making amongst everybody else, you might take that, what I just said, 30 days of loss last year because somebody else, they quit on their terms. I'd be willing to bet that it's going to knock it down to less than 10, right? And it sucks at first, but man, again, we're playing the long game here. And I think that a lot of people are, so it's a quote that I told Natalie, my employee, she's our director of employee success, basically HR. This morning I said, it was a quote by me, and, she was giving me crap about it, thinking it was, it's like, oh, so philosophical, but it said, stop fixing, start preventing. Meaning that don't just fix the problem now. Like, let's play the long game, and let's start making sure we're putting these processes and follow them. I mean, it's the whole, same saying of, teach a man how to fish, he'll eat for life, give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. And And that's, I think, also important. And it's tough, we'll all agree that, and I'm not perfect at it, but I mean, people say, oh, I can't find people. I hate hearing that more than anything, because look at Amazon, look at the big ones, right? Yes, they have a lot more money. Okay, whatever. But there's also things that people don't like about them, which is why there's people out there for you. But they're doing it. They don't have excuses. They can say it's tough, but they're doing it.
I would be running the geo-targeting ads that you're running on where potential employees gather. If you've got an Amazon warehouse in your area, they don't air condition those warehouses. Like, the people that work there are busting their asses to get things done. They would love to come work at your lawn care or landscaping company where, it's only 100 degrees outside in the summer, because those warehouses get real hot. And it is.
They say it's chilled air. That's like 90 degrees.
Yeah. So I would be using the strategy that Chad was talking about to target places hard workers are gathering, and they're getting paid well, but they're paying for it, right? Because it's a hard place to work, and if you know that where you're going to have people working is difficult, but you also have like a company culture. I know how much effort Chad puts in to the team at CLC so that they feel valued, they're, taken care of.
Yep.
And so it's a much better place to work than an Amazon warehouse.
Yeah. And I think that, I've actually personally, not, to change the subject on that, but I personally have toured an Amazon warehouse. And it's funny because people were, people back, this is probably right before COVID, which, by the way, is amazing. So if they ever open it up, I don't know if they do now anymore, but touring the automation of the facilities, it's amazing. But anyways, it's really not as bad as people think. However, it is one of those things that's very monotonous, right? And so to me, what I would suggest on those ads is finding the pain point, right? Okay, well, if they're making $17 an hour here, I know just us personally, like, we're starting at about 19 for like just a base starting for like landscaping. Now, again, we got to hold them accountable, but we start at that. So that's one, we know we're higher. Number two is, you can say, or, you basically hit pain points, right? And we can agree in any kind of marketing. You sell on pain points. In my opinion, what we've seen is get better. Like, so I'll give you an example. We just did we're doing a pretty good campaign, right? We got all the, digital stuff and all that, whatnot, Facebook and targeting, whatever. But we started doing a true campaign, in my opinion, is going to be like, so now we've got the 9-around door hangers. This is for mowing clients, right? So, but then we did yard signs, and we went to every neighborhood that we service. And we have 3 different yard signs. One, we're tracking them, which I want to touch on that point about employee hiring here in a little bit. But so we are tracking them. We use a thing called What Converts. It's an app that you can, different phone numbers, QR codes, whatever forms, you just know where that lead came from, right? So anyways, we put that by mailboxes. So we have a single flyer, but going back on like hitting a pain point, right? One of my targeting signs is for lawn care, says simple, effortless, consistent lawn care. That's all it says on the sign. And then a sign next to it has a big QR code with a phone number. And then there's another sign that has all that just on one particular sign. And then we have a sign that we did was all white. It looks like those, hey, we buy houses signs, somebody just took Sharpie. We intentionally got it printed that way with a different phone number. And surprisingly, those are actually working better, I guess, because people want that's a local guy. It's crazy. Yeah. It was kind of surprising. But my point is like, we kept it very, very simple, straight to the point. But like, we've even thought to this point now, is like, man, I kind of want to put like $200 a day. I haven't really figured out any good taglines yet for like the landscape industry, like what really is going to incentivize them. But having that literally sticking a post right out in front of the exit point of Amazon or UPS or, these places where the people, granted, I know a couple guys at UPS and they make pretty good money. They work their butt off, but they do pretty well. But, finding those places where they hang out, gas stations, right? And to that point, you're going to run into people saying, hey, you can't put signs here. We've already had to deal with that. I ordered enough to keep putting them. So, we have our girls in the office, they go out like every week and they're just checking them. But that's one thing, right? Selling around the pain point and getting the point across really, 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 really fast. They either want you or they don't. Yeah. The other thing I saw, and I'm not gonna take this. I know Cody. I know you know Jacob Godar with Scooter's Lawn Care. Yeah. I know you know him real well. I think that's actually how we met. I think you're actually the first Tesla that I've ever ridden in a while back when we went to lunch one day. So, but so I saw this video a couple years ago. Him and Zoe, his one of his office manager up in Illinois.
Mhm.
Anyways, they did a kind of a video about about trying to get new employees. And they said, do you or do you hate sweating? Well, then we're probably not for you. Do you hate
Yes.
like getting dirty? We're probably not for you. And like it was just again going back to being different and standing out. It was just all they did was flip it upside down, and I loved it. Right? I mean, granted, maybe because my mind works more on the business side, and you got to like think of how your employees think, but not that they're better or worse. It's just the fact of you got to get in front of their eyes, right? And so
Yeah. It's a like
yeah.
tongue in cheek
Yeah.
invitation, because what you're really saying is, do you like getting your hands dirty? Do you like being out getting sweaty?
Yeah.
Like you're spelling out all the things that are part of this job that some people are like, no, I don't want that.
Yeah.
And some people are like, yeah, that's where I thrive.
Or they'll say, do you hate having a really, really fun like team to work with every day? And then we're not, you know what I mean? So it's like you throw the good and the positives in a negative way, and but yeah, so it's just twisting it, right?
Mhm.
We do the same thing we're kind of briefly on this in terms, I know, want to kind of focus on landscaping, but for our lawn care, we're doing a little different. I'm lucky enough our office is 5 minutes away from Texas State University, and
Mhm.
there's like 40,000 students, right? And so to me, my personal opinion, in a residential setting, we just do mow, blow, and go kind of, whatever. We have found that we're going to really push the part-time model where they still work a full day, but they can work 1-2 days a week. If they want to work Saturday, Sunday, whatever. But what we've done is the same thing with geofences right on top of the university, right on top of the apartment complexes. And we're on pay for performance for those. So we'll say, hey, make up to $200 a day, hate working nights, hate working retail, or like we have the outlet mall. Everybody either works at the outlet mall or you work at the bar, right? And so it's like, you want your nights back? Do you hate the outlet mall or whatever? And again, those are those pain points, because I know the students around here, that's where they go. And it's finding those to get their attention, right? Because for us, lawn care, I mean, it's simple, right? It's still different in heavy maintenance, like commercial and stuff. I think it's a different person in terms of, because you're just going all day long. Where ours is, you do 20 lawns in a day, and it's 30 to 40% of your time is sitting in a van or driving, which we're trying to get down on, but that's also why we're on pay for performance. But point is like, finding the right person, and in terms of those employees, like we'll go to apartment complexes and we'll ask them, hey, can we put this flyer up? And again, same thing, very quick to the point, and kind of leads me to one more thing about that is the same reason why me personally, I'm not different than most. I mean, I think people figure it out after a while, but when you start out, everybody wants to list like all their services on the side of their truck, or all their services, like just, and you got all this mumbo jumbo, and everybody's like, oh, like nobody's actually reading it. I mean, you get the, few here and there, but to me, on something like that, it's the brand awareness, right? But if I put enough information of like, hey, we're hiring this type of person, whatever, in enough spots, I mean, throw enough hooks in the sea, you're gonna get a bite, and so, but that's why I like to go bold and simple. That's kind of just our, our MO, I guess, on that. But yeah, like hopefully that kind of helps give some insight on kind of how we target who we want, but there's just no easy answers for that. I wanted to kind of mention about the tracking stuff though, and understanding like on like a higher level. So we are working on it's just a part of it. We're handling a software transition right now from, one CRM to another. And with that, it has some integrations with our payroll and hiring and recruiting and all that stuff. So it's going to be nice. But anyways, during that process, we're kind of like a couple of things we ask and we want to look at is like, okay, like somebody calls you and says, hey, I want a job. Okay, that's cool. But if you're not writing that down, I mean, what's the point, right? You may not need them right now, but I always say we're not always hiring, but we're always interviewing, because if you really look, you're always going to find a weak link. Unfortunately, I mean, to be honest, right? And unfortunately, there's just no perfect group of people. I mean, it just doesn't work. Even if there was, that's what I call saying I always like to use in the office is better your best. Right. So if we think we're really good, well, there's always something better.
Even if you have an amazing team, there is a hard cap on how much work they can do. So if the business is still growing, you have to add more people.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, but with that is, so let's say people, they come in, you've got to have the stuff coming in. And surprisingly, I really couldn't find anywhere that was kind of built for we finally found something. It's just in terms of okay, whether it's Indeed, whether it's Craigslist, whether it's Facebook, whether it's, just a word of mouth, somewhere that all goes into one funnel, and you have a list of everybody who's ever called you looking for a job. And then you have, again, scorecard, of that person. You can track them, say yes, maybe, no. If you say maybe, well, maybe they go into just a bucket that says, hey, let's see about maybe giving this guy a job when we're ready. Like, maybe we're not ready right now. But if you find somebody you're like, man, this guy's really good, I don't create a position for him, but you can probably find a spot, because sometimes a really good employee will pay for themselves, will tenfold, right? It's hard to jump, right? It's hard to take that leap. I think, but tracking and knowing, like, okay, now with that being said, it's just like your CRM or just like a new client coming in. Where did they come from? If you track that and you start looking at it, and again, I can start geeking out about analytics, but when I think, Cody, we have talked about it a few times about just the data and like how you can go, and like I'm sure I've ran down a rabbit hole pretty far with you, and so I apologize, in the past, but no, it's pretty interesting where when you can start to have the data and you can see that, okay, well, we have X amount of new employees, same way you find out we have X amount of new leads. It cost us this much to put ads, hiring, all that different stuff out. And, and so we know, okay, well, you find your cost per potential employee or cost per lead, whatever, call it cost per internal lead. Then you find, okay, of the ones that have, stayed on, well, what did it cost you to get that employee? You can start to find that, but if you can't figure any of that out, if you're not saving any of that data, and it's really not like I can make it hard. I'm guilty. I can make it harder than everything harder than it needs to be. So I'm the king of that. But it's really not that hard as long as you do it. And I think consistency is everything. If you don't do it, then what's the point? And I think knowing that, then you kind of know what works and what doesn't. It's the same thing with those signs I was talking about. It's the reason why we have 3 different signs. And now I'm finding out that this white sign that looks like Sharpie ink is performing 3 to 1 out of anything else.
That's
and
awesome.
So it tells you, but I would never know that. I would think, because my thought is like, hey, this big green, nice sign that matches our logo and all that stuff is going to be what's going to work, but I was like, well, let's try this one also, because I see them everywhere. Obviously, if you're always doing it, then it's got to be something a little different. And so we try it, and here they are. Like, it's proving my emotion wrong of my thought, but by the analytics, right? And again, you can trust it. And so, but if you're not tracking it, you can't trust anything, because you don't know. All your thoughts become emotional, and or just kind of like, I think that's going to work. Well, it's kind of say like, hope is not a strategy. I hope this is going to work. Like, let's try to know as much as we can that this will work. And then it's easier to throw money at it. Cody, you could probably talk. I'm sure you've talked plenty on this podcast. Like Google and pay-per-click and all that stuff. If you know that it's like, hey, your cost per lead is going down, your cost per client is going down, whatever. Well, hell, but you're still getting the same amount. Let's double down on that, right? Yeah. It's the same thing with
if it is a machine that you can put 1 quarter in and get 2 quarters out, you'd stand there all day, doubling your money.
I'd hire 3 other people doing the same thing.
Yeah. Chad, I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on the show. And obviously you have lots of wisdom to give out. So we will have you back in the future to talk about some other stuff. We can, now that I'm reminded that you are an analytics nerd, we're going to get you back to talk some marketing analytics in the future to help people evaluate success of campaigns. But if you are watching this on YouTube, make sure to give us a like, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. And if you are listening to this on your favorite podcast app, leave us a rating and a review. It helps more people find the show and spreads the word. And Robert is not here with us, so I would be amiss if I didn't say his catchphrase. Make sure to grow your business at Lightspeed. Chad, thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me, Cody.